Do y'all remember the writer's strike? You remember the writer's strike of the early aughts and how that's how we was it the late '90s or the early aughts? I don't know, but that's when we started getting all those reality TV shows, like a ton of them. That's when like Queer Eye for the Straight Guy came out, and there was Survivor was really big. Big Brother came out, I think, somewhere around this time. Um, there was a bunch of escapism going on, and they were doing a bunch of reality TV because they didn't have to hire writers for it. Although there have been some, for those of us who are reality TV enthusiasts, there has been speculation that these shows are now scripted, right? Like they're scripted now. But in the past, when they first came out, that was like a way of getting around the writer's strike. So I do have to apologize. I know this was like 20 years ago, but I do have to apologize for basically like virtually crossing the picket line and watching all these fucking shows. And I mean, they had so many of them. There was one, there was a dating show where they brought a bunch of, I think it was a gay dating show. And they were all staying in a nice house in like Palm Springs and doing kind of like a dating show, and all these things like evolved out of this writer's strike. Okay, so I'm getting ads right now for a show called Ordinary Joe. I don't know what the fuck that is, but I do watch various clips on YouTube, and then I'll get like when they're monetized, they start giving me these ads and stuff. I don't know what Ordinary Joe is, but it just reminded me of that. What the hell was the name of that show? What's the name of the show? It was, I think it was called like Average Joe, actually, or something. It was something like that, where they basically took this dude who lived in a trailer home in San Clemente and convinced a bunch of women that he was rich. And they went to France to film this. They were staying like in a chateau in France, and totally convinced all these women that this dude was like, because he was a good looking dude, right? Like you can clean people up and clean people up. So basically they took this dude who had no money. He lived in a trailer in San Clemente. They took him to France. They convinced all these women that he had a lot of money. And then there was one scene where like he went behind the bushes with one of the women, and you could like hear slurping noises and stuff. Like it totally sounded like some kind of linguist was happening. So he sounded, and everybody who's watching the show is like, oh my god, what people will do to win, what people will do just to win, right? And I remember the woman who won was like so fucking horrified when she found out like the truth of the situation. Another one, okay, this one, I don't want to like throw too much shade at you, Ralph Garman, but the other one was Joe Schmo. You guys remember Joe Schmo? Joe Schmo. I feel for that dude. I think he was probably mentally scarred for the rest of his life. So basically, they cast, they bring in this dude. He is the only person on the entire cast who was real. He was the only one who was real. It was like the Truman Show. It was like the Truman Show. And like every single other person who was a part of this like competition was actually cast for a specific role. Fucking Kristen Wiig was on it, you guys. Kristen Wiig was on it. Ralph Garman. There was a bunch of people. Like there was the guy who was cast as his best friend, and he literally got in there as his best friend. There was Kristen Wiig. There was she was great. She was fucking great on that show. And there was the dude, the crazy dude. The crazy dude was so great. He was so great. Okay, so when they had their ceremony, because you know how like all of these reality TV shows, they have their ceremonies at the end where they're like eliminating one of the contestants, and their ceremony consisted of each one of these contestants had a decorative plate with their name and their face on it. And what Ralph Garman was the host, right? what he would do is he would pick up the plate of the person who was going to be eliminated that got voted out or whatever, and he would say, "You're dead to us," and he'd throw the plate in like the fire and break the plate. So one of the storylines that they had on that show was that the crazy dude actually like contacted an attorney and got himself back on the show. So they had to like super glue his plate back together. Fucking super glue his plate back together. It was so sad. And like they go all the way to the end of the show, and this one dude, there's only one dude on the show who didn't know that it wasn't real, you know, like he's the only real dude on the show. And they he gets to the end and they explain to him like what the fuck happened, and it looks like he's about to have like a mental breakdown because he's so freaked out by what they're telling. They did like I think they did 2 or 3 seasons of Joe Schmo, and they had to keep disguising Ralph Garman in different ways to make sure that like people wouldn't figure out like that it was that show, that it was the show where they're gonna trick you like that. Anyway, yeah, I'm getting these ads. I am a reality TV enthusiast, but I don't I not so much anymore. Not so much anymore. Pretty much Survivor I think is starting again tonight. That's the only one I really watch anymore. Sometimes I watch Big Brother, but like I kind of stopped watching Big Brother last summer when we went into the pandemic because it was so weird for me to see a bunch of strangers living together without wearing masks. We're in a different time now, you know? We're in a different time. But I think Survivor is starting tonight. I'll probably watch it. I'm getting a little bit more receptive to the idea of people being like quarantined and then living in an environment together. Plus, they're going to be out in the open the whole time. They'll be out in the open the whole time. But man, this pandemic's really freaking me out, you guys. Okay. I don't know what Ordinary Joe is, but it just reminds me of that show. I think it was called Average Joe. I think that's what it was called. All those fucking reality TV shows. It literally came out of the writer's strike. That's where it came from.